Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Mashonda Shines. Well, welcome back to another edition of Try Beginner's Luck. It is the end of the month. We made it to the end of Women's History Month. And y'all, I say I'm thrilled all the time, but for real, I'm probably having an outer body experience right now because I'm so excited about today's guest. But at the beginning of this season, I shared with you that we are going to be the transition area, and I am serious about that. And when you're in transition, you don't get to ignore what's happening around you. You have to continue to move. And so this space is a space where we can decompress and not let the distractions distract us. We aren't turning a blind eye to reality, but we are choosing not to let it drain our battery. We are going to continue to control the controllables. We can't fix the whole world at once, but we can control our effort, our kindness, and our community. And we're going to fuel the fire. I'm here to provide you with good stories and information that will help you cross your personal finish lines, regardless of what is happening on the sidelines. Whew. That felt like I needed to take a collective breath with everybody. Let's breathe in and we release. Because triathlon can be that place where you can have the reprieve. And that's what we are as we are trying beginner's luck together. So there are moments in sport that look like breakthroughs, but beneath them all, they're choices, quiet ones, the ones no one sees, the kind that ask you to decide who you are before the world ever celebrates what you do. What does it look like to chase excellence while holding your values steady? To stand at the highest level of competition and still say, my life is bigger than this moment. To choose family first, even when the world is telling you to chase podiums. Today's guest lives in that tension with grace and conviction. She is someone who reminds us that greatness is not just about how fast you go, but how grounded you stay. That is, it's possible to pursue the top of your sport and still honor the people and priorities that matter the most. Sometimes the boldest moves you can make is stepping back. We know a lot about that on Try Beginner's Luck. Trusting your timing and believing that what is meant for you will not pass you by. Because when your foundation is strong, when you know your why is clear, everything else has a way of aligning. Yeah. So you want to know who it is, and I want to tell you who it is. She is a world champion, a national champion track and cross-country runner turned triathlete who rose to the very top of the sport. In 2022, she's an Ironman World Champion in Kona, where she delivered one of the most remarkable performances we have ever seen. A professional athlete who stepped away to become a mother and return not just to compete, but to win on the biggest stage. A mother, an advocate, a competitor who continues to prove that you don't have to choose between being present in your life and powerful in your pursuit. Today, I am thrilled to welcome to this audience let me put some respect on that, Mrs. Chelsea Sodaro. Chelsea, welcome to Try Beginner's Luck. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. I will have to say, I didn't want to give too much away in the introduction, but I had an opportunity to be at Eagleman in 2025, and I volunteered, and it was such a powerful thing. And the first thing you said to me was, thank you for volunteering, and I could have melted. Your humanity and Your humanity that you shared in saying that, then we took a picture and you pointed at me, and I'm like, "No, I need to point at you." Showed me everything about your character and who you are and why you're not just a champion in the sport, but you're a champion in life, and I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, the reality is that Ironman events are built off the back of incredible people like you who volunteer and show up for all of the athletes everywhere from the winner to the person who crosses the finish line last. And I remember your beautiful smile and vibrant energy. And so it's really fun to spend this time with you again.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you. Chelsea, 27 years old, and you said, "Hey, I wanna do something different." What was that like? You were at the top of your game, being the champion, 2 times champion, in track and field and cross country, and you said, "Hey, I wanna take a risk and try something different." What was that like for you?
Yeah, I graduated from college in 2012 and had some very early success as a professional runner. I won the 10K Road National Championships in 2012 and then the Indoor 3K National Championships in 2013. And I almost made the World Championships team on the track in the summer of that year. But I really struggled with a ton of injuries. I also had a hard time finding a sustainable way to pursue my sport. There is not a lot of money in running unless you're winning medals at the highest level or you're racing marathons. And so I was kind of scraping by. My body was getting really beat up. And then I had the worst possible performance on the most important day at the Olympic trials in 2016. And I thought, I don't know if I can keep on doing this to myself. And my husband and I were watching the Olympics from the comfort of our couch, the Rio Olympics, and we watched the triathlon. And he said to me, "You know how to swim and bike. You're always injured, so you do that all of the time. I bet you'd be pretty good at triathlon." And I thought it was a really silly idea, but the women competing at that time were so powerful, and Gwen Jorgensen won the race, and I thought, maybe I should give that a try, pun intended. And I ended up joining a squad based in San Diego. I blew up my entire life. I moved from the mountains of Arizona to Poway, San Diego, and it was a big risk, I think. And every big athletic success, probably every big success in life, is decades in the making. And so I see that early decision to pivot to triathlon as certainly a big risk, but also an investment in my talents. I was always really hardworking as a runner. You can only run so many hours and so many miles a week. And I was always trying to figure out ways to train more and to get better. And the cool thing about triathlon is you have three sports to work on. So training as much as you do in triathlon really suited my drive and my personality.
So, I'm curious because you said that you blew up your whole life. You're watching the Olympics. Make this decision to go join the squad in, I think, San Diego. But there's not much money in the running portion. But at the time, there wasn't that much money in triathlon either. Or at least that's what we're told. There's not as much money as other sports. And so, having this conversation with your husband, who is a phenomenal athlete in his own right, to say, hey, let's do this. If one didn't provide that monetary satisfaction, i.e., in the running world alone, what made you think that triathlon could or would?
Well, it certainly wasn't a financially driven decision. I didn't expect to, switch to triathlon and immediately start, making a lot of money. But when I was starting to kind of manifest this whole idea of changing sports, I got connected with this professional triathlon coach, and he said, "Why don't you come out and train with my squad for a week and we'll see how it goes." So I went to that squad in San Diego, and I had a lot of work to do on my swim because I did summer swim team as a kid, but I wasn't, a great swimmer. However, I realized I was really strong on the bike, and I was going for rides with some of his athletes, and I thought, like, this is not that crazy. I had no trouble keeping up. And he told me, "I think that you could be really good at this if you stick with it, and I'd like you to come join the squad full time in a month." So I had some encouragement from that perspective where he saw something in me and decided, to give it a go. And I think that was enough encouragement to, I guess, take a big risk. I didn't, start making money in triathlon until I got 4th at the 70.3 World Championships a few years later. It was not a sustainable pursuit from the beginning, but I think that I had this intuition or self-belief that I could be really good at it, and you just have to follow that sometimes, even though it may not seem smart at the time.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially when there's so many that have to kind of change careers, not because they want to, but because they have to. Something happens. And so when you get to make those decisions and it's a choice decision, it does make it a little bit more powerful. And what you said that I really appreciate is your intuition and self belief. Because oftentimes taking a big risk, you could be like, but when is it going to happen? When? I believe in myself, but you go through the highs and the lows. And I don't think it's celebrated enough that the journey to whatever success may look like for you is not always linear. You have your highs and the lows. You've also stated that you were really good at the bike. And I'm wondering, because I want to get on the swimming too, because swimming, as you know, is a big barrier to entry. But the
Yes.
fact that you said that you're really good on the bike, we know that the bike is where everything happens in a triathlon race. Like your race is made or it's not made on the bike portion. And so, did you have biking experience prior to going to this camp, or you just biking was a part of your when you were running, it was a part of your cross training that allowed you to you just enjoyed it? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how did
Yeah.
you get to be so good that he could see this potential in you?
Well, I didn't actually enjoy the bike when I was a runner. It was, a way that I would cross train, but I would do it on a stationary bike and I really didn't enjoy it. It was just like uncomfortable and boring. But when I was like kind of starting to think about this idea of trying out triathlon, my husband had been gifted a frame from his sister who works in the bike industry, and it was too small for him. So he got it built up for me, and we started going on bike rides together. And we were living in Flagstaff, Arizona at the time. My husband's a very good athlete, so I would just sit on his wheel for as long as I could, and he would essentially try to drop me. And by the end of these rides, I was like tasting blood. I was like working super hard and I was getting that same endorphin high that I would get from running, which really surprised me. As a younger athlete, I thought running, it's like my true love. This is, the only sport where I'll really feel like myself and get that sort of like high. And I started to get it from biking, which was a surprise, but also really exciting to think maybe there are other sports out there that would also fulfill me.
You know, to get a runner's high is a thing, but a cycling high, that's next level. 'Cause you know you've earned every revolution around. You know, you earned every watt that you put out, and so that's very different, and shout out to the sister-in-law, or if you call her a sister-in-love, who you were able to benefit from, the bike being too small for your husband. Interestingly enough, sometimes those are the greatest gifts, the unexpected ones that don't, quote, unquote, "fit someone else." Now the swimming. Doing swimming as a youth, I don't wanna say child, but as a youth, and now having to do it on a more professional basis, what was that transition like? Because you still to this day at least mentioned how swimming is one of those areas in where you really have to focus and work hard at.
Yeah, well, swimming is different than biking and running in the sense that there's so much technique involved. Of course, you have to have the fitness, but the speed really comes from your stroke and your body position and the way that you're moving in the water. Whereas with the bike and run, if you're fit, you're kind of good. I am from Davis, California, which is actually Bike City, USA. The town is designed kind of to mimic like a Netherlands type setup with really wide bike lanes and great like access. And aquatics are also huge. So swimming and water polo are a really big deal where I come from. Everybody puts their kids into summer swim team. And I probably started when I was 7 or 8, this program called the Davis Summer Darts. And I did not like it. I was not very good. I didn't think it was very fun. But I think my parents wanted me to learn how to be a proficient swimmer. So I did it for several summers, just, yeah, a few months of the year. My brother is actually a very talented aquatics athlete, and he went on to compete collegiately at a D1 school. But I kind of just learned the like basic skills. I swam a bit as cross training, but when I started triathlon, I was thrown into the deep end, so to speak. I was training with athletes who had been collegiate swimmers, and it was a sort of sink or swim environment. It was incredibly stressful. I was actually swimming around 30 kilometers a week, every single week for a couple of years. Many of my swims were with a double buoy attached to my ankles, which is two buoys essentially zip tied together and then tied around my ankles. And I had to wear these paddles that went all the way past my wrist, which forced me to learn how to do a vertical forearm that we hear so much about as triathletes. And essentially, with this setup, I was forced into a good body position in the pool. I did hundreds of hours of swimming like this. And I think that's what's enabled me to be a pretty good swimmer. I swam in the front pack in Kona this past October. So it's been quite a transition. I think that I'm really athletic and I have a beginner's mindset and I love to improve. I totally get off on like the small gains I'm making every day. I'm 9 years into this thing and I still get so excited when something new clicks for me in the water. And I think because I'm not, a lifelong competitive swimmer, I still have that curiosity and I still love being in the water. And every day is not fun. Sometimes it's really hard to get to the pool, as you know, but I find a lot of joy in the process. And I think the curiosity um, really helps me unlock potential.
We technically can end this interview right here. You've said a mouthful. Like, one, the beginner's mindset that you have, which I love because I think you do have to kind of sort of approach this sport that way and not ever think that you've arrived. But that's a whole nother message for just life in general, too. But you gave a whole swim tip on being double buoyed down so that you could be in proper swim form. I need you guys to clock this. Do you hear this, people? Okay. Double buoy yourself down, and that will help your form swim hundreds of hours, and you too can have the perfect swim. That's incredible.
Well, I'm still actually not the fastest swimmer in the pool. Like I'm never going to be as fast as my colleagues who, grew up swimming. In the pool, I'm never going to be as fast as them, but I have this really short, choppy stroke that's not that pretty. But in open water, especially when it's rough water, like we get in Kona, it's like I'm very suited to those particular conditions.
But do you have to be the best swimmer?
You
No.
know what? Triathlon is such a gritty sport. And I like to think that I'm just like really tough and it's hard to shake me. The swim, my biggest barrier actually when starting triathlon was how physical the swim was. I have to tell you,
Mm.
can I tell you about my first ever triathlon?
Oh, we are gonna but you can do it right
We're
now.
going to
This
get
is
to
perfect
that.
segue.
Okay.
Yes, come on, let's go.
So I did do one triathlon as a kid in Davis. It was like, I don't know, it probably took like 15 or 20 minutes. I was 11. I won it, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I kind of think the only reason that I won it is because my mom loaned me her road bike and all the other kids had like bikes from Walmart or something. So like I just had an
Mm.
equipment benefit. But I did my first real triathlon and I was 27 in the spring of 2017. I was 27 or 27, I think. And it's called the EDR, like an elite development race. And I was going there to get my professional license so that I could start racing like Continental Cups and World Cups, hopefully later that season. I, um, start the swim. Immediately, there's like bodies all over me. I completely panic. I start doing breaststrokes. Okay. Like a minute into this thing, I start doing breaststrokes. And I think about dropping out for the entire swim. Like, I literally think that I'm going to die. And I don't do breaststrokes anymore, but there are a lot of races where I get scared. I don't like people being on top of me in the water. I think that's like very intimidating for a lot of people. And even now, as like a world champion, it's still hard. But I have luckily like developed tools to deal with this. Anyway, I get through the swim. I am several minutes back. Okay. I hated every moment of it. Hated every moment of it. I thought, like, what have I done with my life? I get on the bike. I bike through basically the whole field. I get onto the run. I don't know what place I'm in, like maybe 10th or 11th or something. And then I run my way into first place. And the only person that beats me is a woman who is already professional. She's been competing for a long time. My coach calls me or he texts me and he goes, "Wasn't that so awesome?" And I lie through my teeth. I say, "Yes, that was so great. I loved it." I hated every second of it. I was like, thought I was going to die for the entirety of the swim. I was just like biking my brains out kind of by myself. And then the run was really painful. Like running off the bike, you don't ever feel good. It's just like hard the whole time. And I honestly was devastated because I thought, like, I have blown up my life to try to do this thing and I hate it. So that's my first experience. I feel like that could be really relatable.
I think it's very relatable. Like, yeah, I feel this is great. No,
Mhm.
it's not great. So when did it become great for you?
It took a couple of years.
Mm,
I continued to compete on that ITU circuit. I actually got a few. I won a World Cup. Actually, my last ever ITU race was winning a World Cup in the summer of 2018. And I still had so much fear around the swim. Like it was just something that I couldn't conquer. And when I voiced this to to my coach at the time, he was like, "You just need to get over it. This isn't a real thing to be afraid of." And I was like, "No, I kind of feel like I'm gonna drown every time I race." Like competing from that place of fear, like that's not how you succeed.
mm,
And I ended up winning a World Cup and I was at this race in Mexico by myself. And, it should have been such an incredible moment where I was like, I did the thing. Now I can like go to the next level and I can start setting myself up to like hopefully qualify for the Olympics in a few years. And like I'm doing it, right? I quit actually. I quit the sport. I was like, this is not fun. I was like living in a training group environment. My husband was working in San Francisco. I was like in my late 20s at this point, thinking like, this is not like, I'm not really down for this life anymore. And I started to realize that like the sacrifices I was making, for this Olympic dream really weren't like aligned with my values anymore. And it really wasn't worth giving up so much. I think until that point, I'd always felt like my decisions around pursuing excellence in sport were um, totally fulfilling. And I wasn't sacrificing. I was just sort of investing in myself. And I was starting to be like, wow, I'm really giving up a lot to do this and I'm not having a good time. The environment that I was in wasn't um, that fun or healthy. It just felt really cutthroat. And even though I was having success, I felt like I was competing from this place of fear. So I quit triathlon for a couple of weeks actually. And then I got talked into trying long distance non draft triathlon. And Eric Lagerstrom, do you know who Eric Lagerstrom is? He's Paula Findlay's husband.
mm.
He loaned me a time trial bike. And the first time I got on it, I thought, wow, this is cool. I really like going fast. And, that was another pivot and opportunity to be a beginner for me. in taking on long distance triathlon?
I have so many ways to go. My brain is like having a party, like, which way do we go? Do we go this way? Do we go this way? Is that one of the reasons? Well, no, it's not. I was going somewhere in my brain too far ahead. So you get this bike, you see that it's fast, and that's when you fall back in love, or not necessarily fall in love with sport, but that's when you're like, I'm willing to give this a try again. I want to go back in the story. You hit on so many key things about being toppled over in the water. And I just need you to know, in case you didn't, people are still having that same challenge and that fear, and it's a
Yeah.
real thing. And so, what I appreciate is your conviction and ability. And I said it in the opening about you putting your values first, like you're choosing you, even in the midst of when you're being told to do something different. Like, this isn't how I'm not just going to get over my fear like this. This isn't the way you talked about some tips and tools that you use in that instance. And I want to go back there because I think so many beginners have this fear, especially in open water swimming.
Yeah.
And even people who are comfortable, who've had traumatic experiences in the water, getting back in, what are some of your tips and tricks in order to calm yourself in instances where you still feel a little uneasy when people are so close to you?
Yeah, so I actually did have a traumatic experience in the water as a kid. I grew up with a backyard pool and I was having a play date, and I think my dad was like looking away for 2 seconds and my friend panicked in the water and she climbed on top of me, pushing me down, kind of trying to save herself. I mean, we were like 6 years old or something. It was not a malicious thing. It was like a fear-based reaction. And so I think that like experience really impacted me, and I didn't realize it until I started open water swimming with people, swimming on top of me and getting that same feeling of being pushed under. I have learned a lot of strategies now, and I wish that someone had helped me with this when I was first starting triathlon, because I think it could have saved me a lot of grief. But it's really important to practice, and I know that's difficult for a lot of people who don't have access to safe, clean open water environments, but we can even practice some of these things in the pool. So even now I practice, with my training partners in the water. We pace line when I'm getting ready for a big race. I have a friend, his name is Conrad Rodas. He is an amateur triathlete, has become a dear friend. I ask him, and my friend Santiago, who trains with me for Kona, I ask them to beat me up when I'm in the water. So we'll even do 25s. They're not hurting me, but they're pushing me under, pushing against me. So I can kind of create that panicked sensation and push through it and realize I'm not going to die. I'm okay. So part of it is psychological. The other thing that happens when we're really nervous in the water is we think, I need more air. I just need more air. And so we focus so much on breathing in, on turning our heads and breathing as much as we can, breathing in as much as we can. And that can create an even heightened sensation of panic. What you want to do is focus on the exhale. And this is something that people work on with breath work as well. I am a fairly anxious person. And sometimes when I get really stressed out or I'm nervous, I get this anxious tightness in my chest. And I focus on the exhale. I focus on like breathing out. And this is something that you could do in the water as well. You, of course, like, turn your head to take in air, but then you really want to think about fully exhaling so you don't get this big buildup of carbon dioxide, which can lead to stress.
Since that collective breath we took at the beginning to calm
Yeah.
and ground, doing the same thing in open water is helpful. And we just heard it here from our world champion. So listen, she is dropping gems, y'all. If you're on your trainer, you probably should get off so you can take some notes. I got a whole notepad here of notes. Like, watch this when you can really pay attention because this is good, good, good. All right. You have people who are with you. You have a great team, it seems that they get you prepared and helped you to overcome trauma. And what I'm sensing is that the best way to overcome trauma is to immerse in it, essentially, because you've immersed yourself in swimming. You now have people in a safe environment give you real experiences on what could happen in the water so that you could have better ways to manage it. Um, have you had a time in your more recent professional life that you've panicked in the water and couldn't recover quick enough for your liking?
That's a really good question. I had a really great year of swimming in 2025, actually. So I think I'm not like foolproof, but I'm reaching, I'm approaching mastery.
Good.
And I have way more confidence in myself. I think a big unlock for me has been approaching the swim as an aggressor instead of it being something that I need to get through or that I let happen to me. The swim in the professional women's field, which is the only field I can speak to, of course, it's very physical. People are pretty nasty sometimes. In fact, during my race in Kona this last year, there was a woman who just like was on top of me for 2.4 miles. I don't really know what her deal was because like once you get strung out, you kind of just like want to conserve energy. But for whatever reason, she was just like pushing into me the whole race. And it was such a growth opportunity for me because I thought I can't control her. I will protect my space. She is not getting in front of me. She can do her thing, but I am focused on myself. And so now the swim for me is about getting out really hard, getting into the right position, protecting my space, and not letting anyone get in the way of my goals.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because what you just said is kind of opposed to what most people said and how it's, racing with women is more gentle and it's better. But you're saying that people are aggressive. Who knew? Well, I guess you do. But, us age groupers, we don't know that. This is a real thing.
It's a real thing and it's really scary. I mean, like, that was so intense that I will talk to her the next time I see her because it wasn't okay. Like, of course, we're competitive and we're there to win, but we're not there to win at the expense of other people's safety and races. Like, I'm a cutthroat competitor, but
You are?
I'm not gonna like push anybody or, um, like inhibit somebody else's forward progress in a race. I think that sometimes we can get caught up in the moment,
Mm,
but the longer I do this, the more focused I am on myself, like
mm.
both physically from a training standpoint and also mentally. I'm like a public person in a very niche way, but since I won Kona, the expectations are different and there
Oh, yeah.
is like more chatter about how I handle myself or how I perform. That has taught me to just like focus on what I can control and focus on myself.
Well, that's a natural progression for us to talk about Kona, but I cannot allow you to tell me that you're this cutthroat competitor and not dig into that a little bit. Who knew? You just
Let's
seem
do
so
it.
gentle and mild. Now, when you said that you were tough earlier in the podcast, I was like, I can see that. And there's this one picture of you online where I'm just like, oh, she's a baddie. I don't want to say the word online, but she's a baddie. Like you
Oh,
could
I
just,
love it. No, we do it.
you could just tell. But hearing this is like, whoa, for you to call yourself this type of competitor. And what we're doing now is we're teaching our beginners and whomever's listening this mental toughness. What makes you say that, right, about yourself? Because usually people are like, no, I'm not that. But you're owning it. And I love that. Like you're owning, like, I'm here for it, not at anyone else's expenses. But maybe my question is, how did you get to be this fierce, cutthroat competitor, but yet this gentle and mild person? Like you have an alter ego, it seems like.
I was just telling someone the other day that I almost think of myself as two different people. Like there is the athlete version of me who's out on the race course and who has this big job that's like public and is all about performance. And then there's like the real version of me that is a mom and a friend and a wife and a daughter. And I would say like day to day, I like her more. I like her more, like that's who I like really want to be. But, the unlock on the race course is the alter ego. And I think when I was a younger athlete, I was way more intense all of the time. And now I have more of an ability to turn that intensity off. And I think a lot of that is because of my daughter. I think that motherhood has softened me in some ways, but it's also made me fiercer and it's made me really evaluate my values, and I can boil them down. A really good friend of mine, his name is Brad Stolberg. He writes about sustainable excellence. He has encouraged me to think about my values, and they are my family, integrity, which is all about doing the right thing when no one is watching, excellence, and service. And, since my win in Kona, I have like gone to see how powerful my story is and how I think that is my, like, vehicle to make an impact on my community.
There's nothing like having strong value system. And I know you just said I can't remember his name. Can you pronounce his name again for me?
Yeah, Brad Stolberg.
Stillberg, Brad
Yeah.
Stillberg, who helped you to realize it. But I need you to see that you've been value driven since you were young. You've always stood 10 toes down in principles. And so maybe this was the awakening for you and he just allowed you to see it. But you walking away from sport after you won an ITU race said that you stood on integrity, your family, like you've lived this. And I think you just received definition to define it. But this is what you've been living. I want us to talk a little bit about that because I can tell that you struggle, especially saying since you won the World Championships in 2022, that other people's expectation on you on how you act, how you perform may not align with your value system. And I think sometimes in sport, when we are seeing a level of success, let me back up. You're at a place because of your value system and your character that you are able to sustain the level of success and handle it with grace because you've had to deal with it so far long ago and you've made choices that have allowed you to say, oh, yeah, this is easy. And I don't really care what you think because this is what my value. And so you've had practice doing it. Speak to that a little bit because I think sometimes people want the success. They want it, but they don't see the iceberg. They only see the top of the iceberg. They don't see the groundwork and the foundation you've been laying. And so now you have this success, which could to some people seem like, oh, out of obscurity. Like how did she come into sport, quit, come back, and she's here after having a baby? Like you made decisions and then those decisions honored you. And so wrestling with that, I think is something real that people have to deal with and contend with. Share into your process about that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, like Brad helped me vocalize my values, but I really am a values driven person. My mom is a family doctor. She started med school when I was one. She had my brother during med school. My dad was a high school teacher, and my husband is a firefighter by training. So, like, my brother was a special tactics officer in the Air Force. Like, I come from a very service driven family, and I think I've really wrestled with, like, the selfishness of being a professional athlete when so many decisions are about you, and what has been so cool about the win in Kona, and then, the conversations around mental health, my mental health, I, like, realized how I think that seeing women, like, at the height of their power, it's really important, and it's such a good example, and, that's where I find meaning, and I do think that, like, the reason that my success has been meaningful is it's come from such an authentic place, like, I didn't go into Kona thinking that I didn't go there thinking like I didn't have to win at all costs. It was about doing my best. And sometimes I think with the expectations of other people, it can start to feel heavy, but I do perform at my best when I am there to see what is possible and what I'm capable of, and when I'm doing it for the right reasons. And I have lots of reminders of those values. When I see my daughter in the morning, things become very clear. I don't know if I answered your question, though.
No, I think you did answer the question. And I think for me is when you were in Kona and you were racing that day, were you having the type 2 fun that you expressed that you had when you were in Eagleman in 2025? Was it similar to that moment and feeling now that you can look back? Like in Eagleman, where you came across the finish line second, may not have been the ultimate victory of breaking the tape like you wanted, but you mentioned the fun that you had. Did
Yeah.
you feel like you had since had that same type of fun if you could look backwards at your Kona run in 2022, that's what you were experiencing on the course, that level of fun that allowed you to relax and not have to think that you had to win at all cost?
Yeah, I think I had, both type 2 and type 1 fun on that day in Kona. I had so few expectations, and that's a really great place to compete from. I love being the underdog, and so I was just, like, excited that I was still in the race the whole time. I thought like, "Wow, I can't believe I'm still here and I still feel decent." What was so cool about that race is I started to build up a really big lead by, I think, 19 miles in the race. I had a 5-minute lead, and I thought, "Okay, I just need to, like, put my head down, one foot in front of the other, don't mess this up." And then as I'm, like, running back on the Queen K towards town, some of my professional colleagues and a ton of amateur women started yelling at me, "Do it for the moms, do it for Sky, do it for us." And by the time I got to the finish line and kinda, like, fell into my husband's arms and kissed my kid, I realized this is bigger than me. Yeah. So I, like, had an epiphany that I needed to do something really good with that moment. And I think that's a unique experience, and I'm not a I'm not a very religious person, but I am spiritual, and I think that in a sense, like, I earned the moment, but I was also gifted that moment to make an impact. I did my first, like, keynote last night, and so I had to think about what I wanted to share and the, like, impact that I've made. Like, we had a lactation station in Kona last year. Ironman and Challenge have either expanded or adopted their race deferrals since I won. Like, I've consulted with multi-million-dollar companies on best maternity leave and family leave practices, have raised a chunk of money for For All Mothers, which is a maternity nonprofit working to end the motherhood penalty, and have, like, the PTO to expand their motherhood policy. And I'm really desperate isn't the wrong word, but Kona feels so long ago to me now, and I really, really, really want another big win for myself, but also I know the difference that it can make. And I think that it looks like, this really shiny story of like, mom wins Ironman 18 months after giving birth to her daughter. But the story is way more complicated. And I've talked a lot about like the mental health aspect of, returning to sports so quickly and like the physical toll it took on my body and how I don't think that like there have been long-term repercussions for that. And I think it's that story that is more important. And that's the story that has motivated me to advocate for change.
Mm, yes. Being gifted that win was both from your hard work, your dedication, and your ability to be the advocate that people needed you to be. And because of your win, the amount that has changed as a result is priceless for some who will never experience that level of or even get to Kona. Like you've opened the eyes of so many people. And women often, especially moms, have to wrestle with the tension of being a mom, being an athlete, being a mom athlete and work, be a mom athlete, work and other. And women really are super humans. And and that's not to be dismissive of others, but it's just to highlight the the amount that women go through in order to just be. And so for new moms potentially who are looking to reinvent themselves and to take a risk on themselves in a different way, what would you say to them at this point, especially experiencing the highs that you have in the postpartum that you experienced? How would you direct them or encourage them in this moment?
Yeah, I used to say, "You can have all of the things as long as you have the right support." And I don't really believe that anymore. I think it's not about having it all, and that isn't even aspirational. I think that we can have the things that we really want and that are important to us, but we have to make, like, clear choices about what those things are. And at this stage of my life, those things for me are family and my work and my sport, and there's not a whole lot of room for anything else. And we also need support to pursue those things. But I think for women, there's so much pressure to have balance and to do it all. And I would just say find the, 2 or 3 things that really matter to you and lean into those.
Hmm. Okay, Chelsea, you did your first keynote.
It
Oh
was
my gosh.
very intimidating.
Oh, I know that we're supposed to be talking about sport and everything, but when we were having like a little discussion before, you was like, you mentioned to me off camera that, well, not off camera, but off, out of our studio time, that we are both trying beginner's luck, right? And this is another layer that you kept from me that you are trying beginner's luck with your first keynote. Tell us all about it. Put us in the room of last night, girl. Tell us everything.
Yeah, so I spoke at the Chautauqua Speaker Series here in Boulder. It's called the Explorer Series, and they bring in athletes and adventurers. And so I talked about the story we've been talking about, right? All the way from my, starting point as a young athlete to now and how that's evolved. It was a very small group, a very kind group for my first talk like this. But it was a great experience and I really enjoyed it. I think I have room to improve, but I'm excited. I think that, our stories really have the power to move people. And um I was listening to this interview with Jessie Buckley, who just won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Hamnet. And during this interview, she says, it's basically like the world needs your too muchness and life is to be lived fully. And I think when we can like share our essence and the things that light us up with other people, it makes the world a better place. So I'm excited to continue to refine my speaking skills.
Me too, because you have a lot to offer. I mean, just sitting here, I'm having to be professional and think, but also I'm in awe of hearing the story my first time. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Hence the pauses that I'm taking. It's like, oh, okay, I need to let that sit in for a second. You are so right. Our stories have the power to transform. And that is one of the impetuses of why I wanted to have a platform like Try Beginner's Luck, because I'm often motivated by people's stories. And sometimes hearing someone else voice something that I've experienced allows me to have, like, oh, I can do it. I can do this too. But you've also kind of further encouraged me, and I don't think you knew, for me to tell my story more. Oftentimes I'm like, I don't know if I should talk about this because I don't know if people will care or is it too much sharing? And so you've encouraged me. I mean, there's ways you can do everything and still have tact and not overshare, but really encouraged me because who am I to keep from with myself what can be a breakthrough moment for someone else. And so thank you for sharing that. And speaking about changes, you've had a lot of changes after you won Kona, which also didn't want to like harp on Kona because so many people talk to you about Kona and it was a great moment and it's a defining moment. But I feel like you're more than that one moment.
Thank you. I think sport is so fleeting, and the reality is that it is just a moment, and I feel, like, really fortunate to have had that. There are no guarantees in sport, right? Like, in triathlon, we could get a flat tire, we could get injured or sick at the wrong time, there's doping. I could do everything right and still not win on the day. There is an element of luck in all of these things and in our lives. And so to have the opportunity to seize that big moment is such a gift. And I think what keeps me going is I really want the opportunity to seize another big moment. But also, I think I have so much more clarity about my life outside of sport as well. And as a younger athlete, I thought, I had a lot of fear around like life after sport or life outside of sport. And now I kind of know that it's like a chapter and it's really fun and I'm still in it, but I think that there will be more great chapters ahead.
Oh, for sure. And what you just stated, you mentioned like the flat tire or getting sick. That actually happened to you last year as well. You're having
I
this
had a lot of that
phenomenal
last.
you're having this phenomenal swim year that you said, and then you get back to Kona and it's a very different it's polar
Yeah.
extremes.
Yeah.
And I think in
Yeah. And
sport
yeah.
yeah, let's talk about it.
It's life. No, it's life. Yeah, I've had some, like, really hard health issues the last couple of years that I'm, like, finally figuring out now, and I feel really optimistic about the future, but gosh, to have, like I really see that as my biggest professional failure on the grandest of stages. And what was so crazy about it is, like, I've failed a lot. I have lost more races than I have won, and in the past, I would just be like I almost would have this, like, very intense self-flagellation, like, really considering my value as a person. And what was so crazy after Kona this year is I was, like, devastated, I was in the shape of my life, I thought I was gonna have a great day, and it didn't play out that way. And, I had to, like, mourn that experience, but also I thought, like, "Man, I really love my life. I really love myself. I feel so lucky to have the opportunities that I do and to keep on pursuing that. Like the sun comes up tomorrow. And it's like these failures that really make or break us. Like I learn more from the failures than I do from the big wins. And I'm also very like passionate about teaching my daughter what humility looks like and what it looks like to pick yourself up after you fall down. Although she was not impressed with me when I got back to the hotel after the race, she said, "Mommy, you didn't win me anything." So, like, the expectations are high in my house, but, she got over it pretty quickly when she got to play in the pool for the rest of the day.
Well, Skylar, she gets it honest from her mom. Like, you have big
Yeah,
expectations, so she gets it honest. And
yeah,
I appreciate you stating that. I think we've all had we all have big wins and big losses in life on different stages, and it's how you handle them. And understanding what's important to you has helped you in that moment. But what you said is, I mourned the experience and then I moved on. And sometimes we can stay in that mourning state too long.
yeah.
And that's when we can get in a little bit of trouble. And so, for those of you out there, including myself, who've had our shares of disappointments, DNFs, take it as a learning experience. And, if our world champion can sit up here and win one year and then DNF the next on the same big stage, who are we that we can't do that same thing too, depending on the day that we're handed on race day? And so, just because your start looks different, don't minimize the small beginnings and don't minimize the unfortunate, I don't want to call them losses, but the unfortunate challenges you may experience on race day that might not permit you getting the hardware metal at the end. Like, don't allow that to, like, ruin your optimism about where sport can take you. You've changed once you had your big win in 2022, you then switched pretty much everything. Like, you said, "You know what? I'm gonna start clean." Whether that was your instance or not, that's just what I'm visualizing. Like, I'm getting a new coach, I'm moving to a new city, I've got a new bike sponsor, I am now a world champion. That is terrifying at the same time that you're experiencing something new. And so, just like you experiencing all those things new, how has life been different with the new coach? And can you talk about how trading, having a new coach, new start, a fresh start, has allowed you to pivot in a different way and relate that back to the age group experience?
Yeah. It really gets back to my core values. I realized um, midway through 2024 that my team wasn't really aligned with my values. And that's why, I made all of those changes. Like we moved um, to Boulder. I actually live in a little town called Niwot, just outside of Boulder, which will be important to people who live here, which was like both for training and a family decision. I wanted my daughter to grow up in this really beautiful, incredible community. And then I started working with Neil Henderson, who is brilliant. He has coached Flora Duffy and Taylor Knibb, but he's also coached world tour cyclists to time trial titles and to Tour de France stage wins. And he's an incredible human. And I think, and Ventum has like supported me wholeheartedly, even when, things have been hard for the last year. I think they see a lot of value in me just beyond my race performances. And what was so cool, when I dropped out of Kona this year is I felt like so unconditionally supported. I think a lot of times in professional sport, probably sport at all level, right? Like the support is conditional based on how you're performing. And that doesn't set us up for our best success. In my world, it's a business, but we're still human beings. And I think it has to be fun. You have to feel like the people around you actually care about you as a real person. And I feel so lucky to have found an environment like that where I can really thrive and be my whole self. I guess I just feel like excited about what's possible when I like have my health back because my head's in such a good space and I have this incredible team around me who are brilliant and it's super fun. Like I had so much fun preparing for Kona last year and I guess that's what makes me feel like I still have a big win in me. The process has to be so fun. Like we spend most of the time on the side of the mountains, right? Like most of the hours are preparing for these one day events. It's only, like anywhere from 8 hours to 17 hours that you are doing the race. Hundreds of hours you're spending preparing for it. And those hours have to be really joyful from my perspective, at least if you want to do this for a long time. And I think that I turned 37 in a couple months. And I think, the reason I'm still doing this is because it's really fun.
And speaking of joy, this one's with Skylar. She told me to ask you this. Your bike has on it, "Yes, yes, yes," as a tribute to her in one of her first phrases. When it gets tough, you've already talked about how gritty you are. How do you transform when the miles get tough at, say, mile 18 of a marathon and your body is screaming,
Yeah.
"No, no, no"?
Yeah.
How do you transform that toddler level joy into that grit that you need to carry and push it through?
Yeah, not every moment of an Ironman is joyful. Like some days, everything clicks and you're in the groove and the flow, but a lot of times, in fact, most times, it's not like that, right? So I think that's when you have to rely on your preparation and, for me, I rely on my competitiveness and also just being in the moment, like taking it one step at a time. My mentor, who was my professional running coach, her name is Nagda Boulay. She used to put a sticky note on the treadmill when I was training that says, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. And I think, sometimes we're so focused on the end result that we let go of that forward progress and just how far we can get and how fast we can go if we just focus on each pedal stroke and every stride.
Well, with that, we are going to go into our rapid fire. Thank you so much, Chelsea. This has been such a gym worthy episode, and I've appreciated getting to know you. I feel like today you brought Chelsea the human versus Chelsea the beast mode competitor. We got a little bit of that. You showed us just a tad, which I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity. So rapid fire's easy, breezy questions, lighthearted, just to give people more of an opportunity to get to know you. So, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. Let's do this. Or I should say, let's try this. Which is harder, taming a toddler's tantrum or a 20-mile headwind on the Queen K?
Aiming a toddler's tantrum.
I figured you would say that. That's where that grit comes in. So,
That's
competitors, if you're
right.
listening to this, get you a toddler. What's one thing you buy at the grocery store that never makes it onto the pro triathlete meal plan?
Okay, sorry, say that one more time.
What's one thing that you buy at the grocery store that never
Yeah.
makes it into the pro triathlete meal plan, like your guilty pleasure?
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, okay. Oh, I really love, do you know Van Leeuwen's ice cream? It's like super fatty ice cream.
Yes.
We love it's the dark cherry chocolate flavor. It's so good. Yeah. That's a fave around here.
I need to take a pause for Van Leeuwen. You are not yet a sponsor. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I was at my friend's house the other day. They have a Van Leeuwen store, and I was like, "You have a Van Leeuwen's." They're
Support the pod.
support the pod. You heard it here. Support us in our habit of, for you, dark cherry. For me, it's their cookies and cream. Oh my gosh! Oh, you just took me into
Nice.
this is supposed to be rapid fire. Clearly, ice cream is a fave. Just had a whole moment thinking about that great ice cream. You actually tried beginner's luck. Your first race in 2017, or I believe the first weekend, you got your pro card. Were you overly confident or terrified? Like, oh my gosh, what am I about to do with my life?
I think a little bit both, a little bit of both. I was confident that I could get the pro card, but then when I got in the race, I really was reconsidering my life choices.
You said you live in Boulder, and Boulder folks, from what I understand, they are a type.
Yeah.
Do you actually own a Sprinter van, or do you have a normal car or a normal car
So,
person?
yeah. No, this is a good question. Like I said before, I live in Niwot, which is
What?
a little outside of Boulder. I do not have a Sprinter van. I have a mom van. I have a Toyota Sienna, and it's like the sport mode. So it's a
Oh.
little lifted with like all wheel drive. Yeah,
So it's tricked out a
pretty
bit.
pretty cool.
Nawa. I think maybe that's the biggest city. And so Nawa,
Yeah.
I'm going to lock that on in. Pre-race breakfast, oatmeal or something weird that only you concoct.
Yeah, so I sometimes do pancakes and then I sometimes do like sports nutrition, like I'll drink Morton and have some rice and yeah, it's not that pleasant. Forcing your breakfast down at 4 in the morning isn't really that fun.
Run with music or no music?
Mostly I like to run with friends and training partners. So only music when I'm alone or I'm feeling really unfit and I don't want to hear how hard I'm breathing.
That's a good one.
The we're just like you.
And that's why I can't move forward because I'm like, that is such a real thing. Oh my goodness. This is going to be a good one. Steve Submiler win or a Submiler. You bet him to maybe a dinner. I'm thinking that's what it was, or a place. I can't remember the name of it. Do you guys ever race each other? And if so, who wins?
We don't race each other right now. Steve kind of got away from doing endurance sports, but we just got him a gravel bike from Ventum. So we've started to ride together again, which has been really fun.
Hmm.
And he likes to go hard. So I anticipate there could be some racing in our future.
Okay,
And I
okay.
don't know who to win. I don't know. He is really tough. I would say if it's like a short, really short ride, then he would maybe win on pure guts. Yeah, maybe.
I love this. I want to dig more, but I'm not. Retired Chelsea at 50. Clearly,
Mhm.
I'm making you the awesome triathlete and athlete you are. Would you turn to coaching, commentary, or totally out of sport?
Oh, well, I don't think there's coaching in my future, but I have done some commentary, which I really enjoyed. And I think I'd like to do a combination of some commentary and also something completely outside of sport.
Mm, okay. If you could race with any pro in triathlon, alive or have transitioned, or in any sport, who would it be and why?
I could race with somebody from any sport.
Hmm.
Wha- That's such a good question. I think I would probably want to do a relay. I want to do a relay, and I would want Natalie Coughlin to do the swim. She
Hmm.
went to UC Berkeley like me, and she's a multiple time Olympic medalist in swimming, and she's iconic, and she's a mom now. And then maybe I would do the bike, and then
Okay.
Allison Felix would do the run, right?
My soror. Yes, I'm here. We
Yeah.
can make that happen. I think I have an idea. I think that I feel like that can happen. Planner or go with the flow?
I'm a planner,
Mhm.
but I'm learning how to go with the flow a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet or salty?
Salty. That was a post-pregnancy change, actually. Like, I used to be really into sweet things, and then when I had my kid, I'm like, salt. All salt.
One word to describe your 2026 season goals.
Oh, that's such a good question. Um,
And the last question, we don't let anyone depart this podcast without asking. It's very serious, okay? Do you pee on the bike or get off and take a proper pee break? Which
I
you
pee on
probably
the bike. There's no time for stopping. This is another benefit of giving birth. Just let it go.
just let it go. I love it. Do you have any final thoughts that you would love to leave with this audience before we wrap it up completely?
I just want to thank you. Our sport needs your voice, and I'm so proud to share this community with you.
And I'm here thinking you're about to give advice to the beginners and such. Thank you. Do you hear this, people? The world. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. That's really honor. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Well, you heard it here. The sport needs my voice. No, I'm just kidding. But in realness, thank you so much for being here today. I have enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. And for those of you who are listening, I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've loved it, share this with your friends and family. And we want everyone to try. We have the saying here, whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win. And today we had that. Like we heard from a guest who's been winning every time she's tried, whether it's good or it's bad. You win, and you win because you learn. With that, my name is Mashonda Miles, also known as Mashonda Shines. And for today, we are out. Peace. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. We need your help so we can continue to try at TBL. So for more information on where you can find and subscribe to this podcast, visit www.trybeginnersluck.com. And don't forget, whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win.